Welcome back to Driveway Party. Where we left off on this LT1 is I spun the number 8 rod bearing and the surface seems fine. I have my mind made up that I'm going to LS swap the car, but it's going to take me a couple of months to collect parts until I'm ready to start doing it. And I've always wondered what would happen if I just tossed a new set of bearings and a engine that was already blown up. I think it might work because the crank feels okay, the rod feels okay. I don't know if the rod is stretched to the point of it spinning the bearing immediately. It might blow up as soon as I start the engine. It might last a couple of fuel tanks. It might, I don't know, maybe I'll be able to take it to the drag strip and see if it holds up at all. It might, I mean, if I have a backup engine, I feel like this one's gonna last forever because I'll just be then waiting for this one to blow up and it'll never happen. So I'll end up taking out a perfectly good engine. So today, I mean, I don't know if you can see, it looks rough, but it's perfectly smooth. There's no ridges. My fingernail doesn't catch in anything. These were not in there for very long. I would say 3 oil changes. That's about how long it lasted. And I guess I caught the spun bearing quick enough and shut the engine down and pulled it all apart. So that's good. Here are my new rod bearings. It was like 60 bucks. So I'm just gonna reuse every gasket. I really don't care if it leaks. It shouldn't leak that bad. They're like rubber, silicone, Felpro gaskets on everything. The exhaust gaskets are multi-layered steel. So it really shouldn't leak any worse than it did. These things always leak anyway, so what the heck's the difference? So I figured I'll throw a $60 set of bearings in it, and I probably will put some good oil in it. I might put AMSOIL in it. I don't know. I usually just buy $15 oil change, whatever's on sale. I throw it in this thing, 30 weight. Also worth mentioning is if you see how dark this is, and I'll show you on another bearing how dark the bearings are. That's an indication of the oil getting hot. It could have been the cause of the spun bearing could have been from too thick of oil, because I put straight 30 weight in this. It wasn't 1030 or 530. It was just 30 weight, and it takes 5 quarts. I would do 4 quarts of 30 weight and 1 quart of Lucas, which is real thick. So I'm gonna just put 5 quarts of 1030 in this thing, and maybe that was what happened. That could have been the cause. I'm not really so sure. So I'm just gonna go ahead and start slamming this thing together. If you haven't done this before, I'll try to point out some key things to not mess up. So let's get to it. Alright, so I just unboxed my bearings. The first thing I want to show you guys is that it came 2 sets, and they differentiate each other with the yellow shrink wrap and the clear. The difference is the yellow has a hole in the center and the clear does not. So the reason for that is this is the connecting rod side. There's no hole. There's a hole in the crankshaft, and that's where your oil flow comes out of. So the oil needs a way to get inside the bearing, so there's a hole that goes in the bottom of the connecting rod cap. Not the cap. It goes through the bearing and into the surface. So that's the difference. If you screw it up, if you put this one in there, then yeah, you're not going to get any oil. So another thing too, I don't know if you can see this, probably not, but so there's a chamfer on this side. You can kind of see there's like a stripe. It's in the coating. Let's see if we can get the camera to zoom. Well, there's a chamfer. So the chamfer has to go towards the outside near the counterweight of the crank. The flat faces the rod that's next to it. So they're actually going to end up going different ways, each one. What else? So the failure item, I took a picture with my phone because I didn't think the GoPro could see it. So there's these little tabs. And the tab is all that keeps the bearing from spinning. So the top side of the rod has a little spot for the tab to go, as well as the cap. And the one that spun, I don't know, I'll attach the picture if you can't see it here, but the tab is actually broken off in the little keyway there. So that's my failure item. Not really sure if it's oil related. That's what I'm guessing, because I had a super conservative timing map on the car, and it actually started knocking on the dyno after we did a pull, but we only did like, I don't know, a 2,500 RPM to 5,000 RPM pull on an unloaded dyno. So like, actually no, it was a loaded dyno, but nonetheless, this thing's been together forever, and that should not have done any damage, and it did. So I'm thinking it just maybe had to do with the oil. So I'm going to set these down in the bearing caps, and the next step is to use my torque wrench. These bolts, don't want to do that. These bolts are 12 point, so I need this socket. It is a 11 millimeter. It's important to not use an extension, so it's going to be a little difficult to get the torque wrench in there. You'll see me struggling, I'm sure. But if you use an extension, it's not an accurate torque. So time to oh, and this is the assembly lube I bought. It just it goes in the bearings. I think this is what I used last time. It's I just got it on Amazon. No biggie. They're all pretty much the same in my opinion. Oh, another thing, a friend of mine, Jason Corvino, a while ago told me, he's an aircraft mechanic, he told me that anytime you're working on an aircraft, you by law have to have the manual open, and it's supposed to be to the page of whatever you're working on. I bought this LT1 LT4 book late 2011, I believe it was, when I did my first LT1 engine, and I always keep it with me whenever I'm putting an engine together, just because it's always so much quicker to just look up torque specs, and if I have a question on something, or it's here. I'd rather go to this. I trust this book more than just going on Google and, you know, or Facebook and just asking people. Like, there's so many people that act like they know what they're talking about, but in the end, I believe this book over anything. So here's another gasket. It's just like silicone, so there's no reason why I need to replace these as long as they're clean. I've never put any kind of goop or anything on them. This is all like rubber seals, so it shouldn't leak that bad. None of them are torn or anything. You know, oil pan gasket. So let's get to it. Okay, so Kyle and I put this bearing in, a new bearing. I did not put oil on it because my plan was to plasti gauge, because I only plasti gauged this rod that did not spin and not the one that did spin. And I don't know if you see, this plasti gauge is barely even crushed at all after I torqued it. So I thought maybe I did something wrong, so I did a second one and got the same result. So the book, where was it? The book, the rod bearing clearance, shows 13 thousandths to 35 thousandths, and not crushed. This plasti gauge is bigger than 3 thousandths, and so I don't even think I think it's out of spec. I don't think it's worth putting back together. And I did end up pulling this cap off, and between the two surfaces, can you hear that? There's a ridge. So either the rod is stretched too much or the crank is ground down. I don't think it's worth putting back together. So time to start parting this engine out. I have roller rockers on here. I can get some money for those. These are aluminum heads that have springs ready for a cam. I forget what brand springs they were. Oh, the Ferrari brand? Ferrari brand springs, that's it. Kyle's here helping me. Say hi, Kyle. You're famous. All 20 of you people watching us. Okay, time to start tearing this apart. I guess I'm not putting this back together, so I'm gonna end up taking it off jack stands and get it out of here. Time to start LS swapping this thing. Alright, just pulled the head. In case anyone's wondering, these are what pistons look like. A little bit of rust. I think I got water in here. And cylinder head stripped down. If anybody wants to buy these, let me know. Everything else looks good. Rocker arms, push rods, ARP head bolts. Keep going. Here. I guess this is going to be a shorter episode than I wanted. Gonna have to sit for a while until I collect some parts. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching Driveway Party. We'll see you next week.